Hello, my name is Professor John Bordeau here at Kankakee Community College, and today we are going to install tuning machines. So we're going to have some tools. The first thing we're going to start with is a luthier square. This luthier square I got from Stuart McDonald. You can use a machinist square, so we'll need that. We will need a socket wrench with a socket that fits the nut of your particular tuning machine. Okay. Also, we're going to need a guitar tuning peg hole reamer. These are usually like a 2 or 3% reamer, meaning they're tapered. So they're smaller here and thicker here. So if the hole is not big enough in your headstock, you don't really want to go in there with sandpaper and make it bigger, or a drill bit. You want to use a tapered reamer. And there's a reason behind that. We want to have a press fit in our tuning machine. We don't want it sloppy, and we don't want to pound it in. So these are a perfect tool if your hole size is not the perfect size. We're also going to need a drill, cordless drill. And I have a drill bit. Right now I'm using 1/16 of an inch. We'll use that to the depth of our screws. So in your tuning machines, you'll get some little screws that lock down your tuning machines in place. We'll also need a small screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver. So Phillips screwdrivers come in different sizes, and this is a P0. Okay, so right on the handle, it has a different size. So a 0 is a very small one. We don't want the normal size, which is a 2. We'll strip it. We'll also need some beeswax. Right? Anytime we use fasteners on a guitar, we use beeswax. Here I just have an old toilet ring. It's actually not used, it's new, but we use toilet rings as a cheap way of getting beeswax, and we use it on every single fastener we ever put into a guitar. Acts as a natural lubricant. Without that, you'll probably break your fasteners. And you don't want that, especially when it comes to a bridge. So, one thing I have in our stem guitar kit is we have some tuners. Now these are just your average tuner, and they're not fancy at all. They work, but a lot of students want to upgrade their tuners. It's a very good investment. So these are simple tuning machines. They're not high-end. So I went out and bought some, and I got some right here. And so what I got here, there is my actual ones that I bought. And these are a higher gear ratio. So these are 1:16 gear ratio. So a lot of times people want 1:16, 1:18 gear ratios. That gives you more control in your tuning. And they're also locking. And so that prevents slippage and going out of tune. So, so here's what I got. I think I bought these from Stumac. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure I did, but I'm not positive. So, first thing we want to do is we want to get the new tuning machine out. And here we have it. And it'll come with the tuning machine, a washer, and a nut. We are going to test fit our tuning machine in the holes of our headstock. I want to press it in from the back, right? I made this mistake once on my first guitar, right? We push it in from the back. Now, I want to take it and push it with both my thumbs. I don't want to hammer it, and I don't want it loose. It needs to be a nice tight fit, and I want to get it so that it's perpendicular to the edge of my headstock. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the washer on next on the front side. Then I'm going to put the nut down, and at first I just hand tighten it. So I kind of just come in here and hand tighten it, and I try to get them all in. Now, you might have to do a little of the reamer here, and be careful, just go slow, and just turn it manually, and walk it all the way down till it gets near the end, the top end. And this will be a very fast way. If you have to roll up sandpaper, it's very slow, and it's not as accurate. So these are worth the money if you're concerning of your time. Now, so I'm going to put the rest of these in, and so make sure you do get them right, so that the key to remember is the part where there's a drill hole, where we're going to drill and mount this, is on the back. We don't want to see that on the front. It's a common mistake to put them on the wrong side. So I just put them in there, and I push them with my thumbs. Okay? And then I kind of at this point try to get them so that the tuning machines are kind of lined up. And I'm trying to get these as perpendicular as I can and equally distance apart. And then, so one, looks good. Two, it has much better stress and strain when it's perpendicular. So that is something we want. So I'm just going to push them in for right now. Push them in with my thumbs. And I'm going to check to make sure that the tuning machine is pressing up against the headstock material. Because I don't want them pushed out. So I'm going to look and make sure they're all pressed down in there, nice and tight up against the wood. Okay? I'm going to turn the tuning machine so they're all consistent. And that makes measuring and making them perpendicular much easier. So at first, all I do is eyeball them. I'm going to just go around and get them somewhat close. Then what I do is I take out my luthier square, and I actually go around and try to use that square the best you can. And basically, if you can get one of them square, then you can just eyeball the rest of them. So I can put that square on there, and I can eyeball that and try to just move it around so it looks as though it's square. All right? You can do the best you can with it. Then once you get one of them in, you can just adjust them visually so that they're all the same distance. Of course, you can measure them as well. So on my luthier square, I have some measuring, and I can measure them. Once you get those kind of close, then you can kind of go in here and put your washers and your nut on each one. Don't lose them, right? And put them on, and then I snug them just a little bit with my socket wrench. Now I don't really crank down on them. I snug them, and then I go through checking to make sure they're perpendicular and equally spaced. And you'll find they'll move around once you start snugging them. So that's why we want to do it in stages, because we don't need to crank it down in the wrong spot. So it's not a hard job to do, but I find some students don't seem to care where these things are positioned, and it looks terrible, right? And also, you know, there is some stresses and strains on these things, and being perpendicular and all of them being uniform sort of matters. So I have all the nuts on, right? And now I just go in and I give it a slight snug. Okay? I'm not trying to crank it down at all. I'm just trying to snug it so they don't move around. And And this is a lot more for aesthetics than it is really on our engineering of it. I'm sure if it's on a slight angle, all of them on a slight angle will still survive. But we want to make sure it's right before we start drilling holes in here. So I get it kind of snug down, and then I go through and I measure, make sure they're all perpendicular, get them all squared away with my square. And so once I do that, I'm pretty happy with them. I snug them down a little bit more with my socket wrench. And then once you have them all kind of locked down in place, then we're going to come in and we're going to drill a hole. And I'm going to stop here for a little bit and we'll come back, and I'm just going to measure these, eyeball them, snug them up, and then I'm going to come back and we'll talk about how do we screw them in place, okay? Perpendicular, and they did move when I'm tightening down with the socket wrench. So you have to pay attention and make sure that they're all correct. So you can see here I have one of those screws in there, and be aware that you don't have to crank it down, okay? You'll strip the screw, that's a problem, and also you can break it real easy. So it's just there so it doesn't pivot, the tuning machine doesn't spin. Okay, so we don't have to really crank it down. You can see I have the drill holes put in all the other ones, and now I just need to go and start putting some beeswax on each screw and use a manual screwdriver, a P0 screwdriver, to tighten them in, and that will be done.